I was around 16 or 17, I used to house sit and dog sit for a family I had known since I was a little kid. Their family was simple, a couple, their 3-year-old son, and 2 big German shepherds. Every year, twice without fail, they'd head off on vacation and leave me in charge of their house and their world. The house itself always felt a little too big for comfort. It stretched so wide and deep that every visit, I'd stumble across a hallway or a door I swear hadn't been there before. It was buried far from the main roads, hidden behind towering trees and a long driveway that seemed to drag on forever, swallowing you deeper into its silence. It was December when they called me again. School was out, snow was barely clinging to the ground, and I figured a little extra cash wouldn't hurt. Everything started normal enough. Mail collected, dogs fed, TV humming in the background while I lounged on their giant couch. The house was an hour away from mine, tucked into the woods, and honestly, there was no point driving back and forth. So I stayed. They always told me, eat whatever you find, make yourself at home. But a place that size, it never really feels like home. It feels like you're borrowing it from someone or something else. After a couple movies, my eyes were heavy. I headed to one of the guest bedrooms, the dogs padding quietly behind me. They flopped down near the door while I buried myself under the unfamiliar covers, scrolling through my phone. I've never been the best at falling asleep, especially in strange places. Even wrapped up warm, I felt like I was laying in the open, watched, exposed. About half an hour later, in the pitch-black silence, both dogs snapped their heads up in perfect sync. Their collars jangled sharply in the dead quiet. I froze, blood pounding in my ears. Dogs know. They always know first. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe an animal outside, a raccoon. I lay still, heart hammering, until they stiffened again. But this time I heard it too, a low, static hissing, the kind you get from an old TV stuck between channels, but sharper, closer. I sat up, throat dry, trying to pinpoint it. Fumbling, I flipped the bedside lamp on. The walls, the floor, the corners, empty, normal. Then I realized the sound was coming from the baby monitor on the dresser. The family's kid was away. No one should have been near that room. I grabbed the monitor, screen flickering softly. Across the top in bright letters, noise detected. The rest was black. A heavy knot tightened in my gut. I thumbed through the settings, desperate for an explanation until I found an option. Room light, off. Without thinking, I flicked it on. The monitor buzzed, switched, and there it was. Crouched low behind the crib, half hidden in the corner, was a figure. A man. Black hoodie pulled tight over his head, knees tucked in like he was waiting, or hunting. Leaned closer, willing it to be a trick of the shadows, a jacket on a chair, a pile of laundry, anything else. But when the figure flinched at the sudden light and bolted across the room, out of the camera's view, the horror clamped down on me like ice water in my veins. I wasn't alone. Somewhere in that sprawling, twisting house, someone was moving. Instinct took over. I slammed the bedroom door shut, locked it, and pressed my back against it, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The dogs exploded into frenzied barking, teeth bared, claws scraping the floor as they lunged toward the door. I had seconds. Maybe less. I grabbed my phone, yanked my bag onto my shoulder, threw the window up, and hurled myself into the freezing night. The second my feet hit the ground, I ran. The driveway that had once felt annoyingly long now felt endless, stretching, like a dark, clawing tunnel. The crunch of gravel under my boots sounded deafening in the otherwise unnatural stillness. I dove into my car, locked the doors with trembling fingers, and peeled out, tires skidding against the ice. My eyes flicked to the house in the rearview. Mirror, looming, silent, windows staring blankly out into the night. No figure chased me, no lights flickered on. The house just stood there, waiting. I called the family over and over as I sped home, panic thick in my throat. No answer. Just the endless ring, like something mocking me from the other side. When I finally made it home, I fired off a shaky text explaining everything. The next afternoon they responded, polite, sympathetic, but casual. They said nothing, seemed out of place when they got back. No damage, no sign of a break-in. Only the dogs, locked in the guest room, scratching at the door to get out. I could tell by their wording. They didn't really believe me. Maybe they thought I panicked. Over nothing. Maybe they thought I imagined it, half asleep in a big lonely house. But I know what I saw. I know the feeling that gripped me that night, that thick, electric charge in the air, pressing down, whispering that something, someone, was there, watching, waiting, breathing just outside the reach of the light. When they asked me to house sit again a few months later, even though I desperately needed the money, I didn't even hesitate. I said no, and I never, not once, set foot on that property again. I'm 21, and not long ago my uncle asked if I could watch his dog while he was out of town. He lives alone, tucked deep inside a remote Alaskan forest. His only real companion? A massive Siberian husky named Duke. Right away, I texted back, "Yeah, of course, man." I'd never dog sat for him before, but I knew Duke was well trained. Feed him, let him outside a few times. Simple. Plus, my uncle's cabin was the definition of isolation. No neighbors for miles, no streetlights, just towering trees and endless cold. Honestly, after how insane work had been lately, I was excited. Total peace and quiet. I even invited my girlfriend to come stay the weekend. Just the three of us, me, her, and Duke, surrounded by nothing but snow and woods. The first few days were normal enough. Snow piled higher and higher outside, a white wall slowly swallowing the cabin whole. But that's Alaska, no big deal. It was the last night before my uncle was due back. We had the fire roaring in the living room, the glow of it casting soft shadows while we lounged around, half watching some movie. Duke sprawled out near the hearth, warm and lazy. When the movie ended around 1 a.m., we decided to call it a night as we moved toward the bedroom. The storm outside roared even louder. The wind was practically screaming against the cabin walls. Snow battered the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. But we were exhausted, and sleep came easy for a while. Around 3:20 a.m., I was ripped out of a dead sleep. My girlfriend shook me hard, her face pale in the dim light from the digital clock. "I heard something outside," she whispered, her voice tight. "Go check." "Please." Still half asleep, I groaned, muttering, Yeah, okay." As I sat up, I noticed Duke, supposed to be sleeping, was crouched low inside the open closet, tail tucked, ears pinned back. His whole body trembled. Duke wasn't the kind of dog to spook easily. Seeing him like that kicked my brain into full alert. I threw on my winter gear, grabbed the hunting rifle from the corner, and switched on a flashlight. The second I cracked, opened the front door, a blast of icy wind nearly knocked me back, but that wasn't what made me freeze. Boot prints, fresh ones, leading up to the cabin, and then away, back into the black woods. I stared, heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the wind. There was no mistaking it. Those prints weren't ours. They hadn't been there before. For a long second I just stood there, flashlight, shaking slightly in my hand. Logic screamed at me to lock the door and stay inside. But something deeper, something colder, told me I had to know who was out there. Maybe it was pride. Maybe stupidity. Either way, I followed the tracks. They led straight out from the cabin, around the perimeter, circling it, like a predator stalking prey. And then, without warning, the tracks veered back into the dense forest. I pressed forward, each step crunching loudly in the deep snow, my breath forming quick, panicked clouds in the air. About 3 minutes in, my beam caught something up ahead, a black smudge against the endless white. I stopped dead, focused the light. A man, standing, perfectly still among the trees, a large black bag slung over one shoulder. His back was to me. He didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. I wanted to call out, to demand to know what the hell he was doing. But the words died in my throat. Because deep down, I knew no normal person was standing in a blizzard at 3:30 a.m., outside a cabin that was supposed to be deserted. Every survival instinct I had kicked in at once. I spun on my heel and sprinted back toward the cabin, the snow grabbing at my boots like hands trying to pull me under. Behind me, I swore I heard a second set of footsteps crunching over the snow, faster, closer. But I didn't dare look back. Bursting through the front door, I slammed it shut and locked every bolt and latch I could find. My girlfriend was already on her feet, panicked. "We're leaving. Now," I barked. She didn't argue. She grabbed our stuff. I grabbed Duke, who whimpered against my chest. We threw ourselves into the car, hands shaking so bad it took 2 tries to jam the key into the ignition. The headlights flicked on, and there he was, at the tree line, just standing, bag still slung over his shoulder, watching. My girlfriend gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Duke barked, low and terrified. I slammed the car into reverse and tore down the snow-choked road, not stopping for anything, not looking back. Halfway to town, I finally explained what I had seen. We called my uncle. Miraculously, he answered. After hearing what happened, his only response was a tense, "Yeah, that's really creepy. I'll check it out when I get back." Later, my uncle called us again. He said when he arrived, the yard was a mess, boot prints crisscrossing everywhere, as if someone had been pacing for hours. But the man? The bag? Gone. Nothing left but tracks disappearing into the woods. We never found out who he was or what was in that bag, and I don't plan to ever find out. Neither does my girlfriend. Neither of us has taken a house-sitting job since, and after that night, I don't think we ever will. When I was in middle school, my mom worked as a house cleaner. Simple job. People paid her good money to keep their huge homes spotless. Big homes, empty homes. She often made friends with the families she worked for, and one couple stood out, an older pair, no kids, just a massive house and a shimmering pool they constantly invited us kids to swim in. It became routine. Whenever my mom cleaned, we tagged along, splashing in the pool while she worked. One day, while planning a vacation, they floated the idea. "Would one of you kids want to stay here and watch the dogs for a few days?" Before they could even finish the sentence, my sister and I jumped at it. Their dog seemed harmless enough. Bandit, a lumbering golden retriever too old to care about much, and Cleo, a rescue husky mix who was less trustworthy. Cleo was wild. She'd destroy furniture, vault fences, bolt at the first open door. Keeping her under control was a full-time job. The plan was simple. My sister and I would stay in the guest bedroom, keep the dogs safe, and keep the house in one piece. The sea. First night, we settled in. I lounged in the basement living room watching some mindless movie, while my sister worked out in the next room over. The workout room wasn't just for exercising. It was also the camera room. A wall-mounted monitor played live. Feeds from every security camera around the house, front porch, backyard, hallways, driveway, all of it. It was around 10 p.m. when I first heard the beep. The house alarm chirped, the same way it did whenever the front door opened. I barely registered it at first. Maybe it was the TV. Maybe I imagined it. But minutes later, my sister came out, sweat still clinging to her forehead, her face serious. "Did you leave the front door open?" she asked. Confused, I shook my head. She pointed at the screen behind her. There it was, clear as day. Front door swinging wide open, a cold, black rectangle yawning into the night. Instant panic set in. I stammered, trying to explain how I'd forgotten to lock it. My sister kept calm, reassuring me. If someone came in, the dogs would be going nuts. The dogs, both sprawled in the workout room, hadn't so much as lifted their heads. We convinced ourselves it was fine. Maybe the wind, maybe a trick of the faulty old alarm. Still, we weren't taking any chances. We locked every door, every window, every latch we could find. Finally, we locked ourselves in the guest bedroom with the dogs. I tried to convince myself we were safe. Hours later, the nightmare truly began. We woke up at the same time. Both dogs were pressed against the bedroom door. Low growls rumbling deep in their chests. Cleo barked at anything. Bandit didn't. When Bandit growled, real, guttural, angry, we knew something was wrong. Before we could even move, the house alarm chirped again. Beep, the front door, and then the unmistakable sound of footsteps upstairs. Heavy, measured, deliberate. We froze, paralyzed in bed, too scared to even breathe. Tears welled up in my sister's eyes. She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and called our dad. His voice, usually calm, barked over the speaker. "Hang up. Call the police. I'm on my way." He made a 15-minute drive in under 5. When we heard the familiar pounding at the door and his voice shouting for us, we unlocked the bedroom, and the dogs shot out like bullets, barking furiously. My dad stormed through the house, gun drawn, checking every corner. Nothing. Not a single sign of whoever had been there. The police arrived minutes later. They combed the house, the yard, every door and window. It didn't make sense. Nothing was missing. Nothing was trashed. But they agreed. Someone had been inside. Someone had opened the door. We waited in the car while my dad and the officers reviewed the security footage. It felt like forever. When my dad finally came back, his face was drained, like every drop of color had been sucked out of him. "What did you see?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He shook his head, said nothing. He didn't have to. The next day, my mom canceled the cleaning contract without hesitation. We were told, firmly, that we were never to go back to that house, ever. I still don't know what was on those cameras that night. Maybe it's better that way, because judging by the look on my dad's face, whatever it wasn't just someone breaking in. It was something worse.